Recording. Okay. Here we are. Okay, so what we are going to be doing is we're going to be studying Sefer Shoftim, the Book of Judges. This will involve a lot of close reading of the text itself, sometimes with maybe additional sources added on. Here is a box of Tanachim. And if those of you who were in previous classes of mine should know what to expect. If you haven't been, we will be doing a lot of reading and then pausing, discussing, analyzing, and continuing to read. We're going to be seeing a lot of this book, a lot of the people in it, a lot of the action, a lot of the activities, a lot of the drama. I'm trying to figure out what's going on, what we can learn from it about them, and about us, and about Torah, God, values. What's it all doing here? So, question number one is, it's called Shoftim, which literally means judges. So what do we think of when we hear the word judge? What's a judge?
Guy in a court.
Passing judge.
Okay, there's someone in a court.
Passing judgment.
Passing judgment. So I was always told that you can't define a word using another word that sounds the same.
I said that.
So what does that mean? So what is passing judgment?
Person who makes rulings.
Interpreting the law.
Yeah.
An interpreter.
Okay, interpreting law. Okay.
Educates.
Not just law.
Educates, teaches law. Okay.
Adjudicates disputes.
Adjudicates disputes. Okay, solves
That's the way it
disputes.
sounds like it.
Okay.
Uses the law to make I won't say the word I'm thinking because it has the word. To make
Okay.
a decision.
Okay. Uses law to make decisions. Okay. Very cool. So one of the first things, well, not maybe the first thing, but one of the soon things, if that makes sense, that we're going to see is if our understanding of the term judge or shofet fits how it's used in this book. Do we see people adjudicating law, rendering legal decisions, educating people about their legal responsibilities? Are we going to see that? We'll see. Sefer Shoftim is the second book in the Nevi'im, second book in the prophets. First we have the Torah, then the Nevi'im, second book of the first four that are the historical books of the prophets that talk about the historical period between the Torah and basically the Babylonian exile, the end of the biblical period. It starts right from the death of Joshua, who brings the people into the land and conquers it, and goes up until very soon before the beginning of kingship. King Shaul, King Saul, and King David. So what we're going to look at is all the action in the book, all the people, what's going on, who these judges are, whether they judge in the sense that we think of it. And let's get started. So, if you open up to the very beginning, which you can find in these Tanachim on page 513.
It's 377.
Ah.
Is that the one you got? I don't know. No. Anybody's got this one. It's 377.
You know, cover writer. How do you know which one I have?
We'll turn to 513 and find out.
Okay, it's probably not 513 because it looks like that one is only English.
Yeah, this is only English,
Okay.
which is 377.
Okay. By the way, are there any questions about the introduction that I just gave? Or any questions about anything else of a introductory nature?
I was just wondering, did Joshua live to be 120 like Moses?
I don't think so. But let's see.
I think this is age,
Okay, so if you are at the beginning of Sefer Shoftim and you flip one page back, more or less, we see in the end of the book of Joshua, chapter 24, verse 29. After these events, Yoshua, son of Nun, Aved Hashem, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110 years. So 10 years shorter than Moshe. Everyone got the beginning of Shoftim? Okay, so speaking of the death of Yoshua, who would like to start reading? Okay, go ahead.
After the death of Joshua, the Israelites inquired of the Lord, which of us shall be the first to go up against the Canaanites and attack them? The Lord replied, let Judah go up. I now deliver the land into their hands. Judah then said to their brother tribe, Simeon, come up with us to our allotted territory and let us attack the Canaanites, and then we will go with you to your allotted territory. So Simeon joined them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So, first scene of the book. Yoshua is dead. Who's the next leader?
Pinchas.
Who's he?
Is Pinchas here?
Simeon.
No, it's
He's not
Israelites.
mentioned.
Okay, so Pinchas isn't mentioned. We may think Pinchas could be the next leader, but he's not here.
Who's the Lord talking to?
So
Okay, who's the Lord talking to? It doesn't say.
Doesn't say.
It doesn't say. Who are the characters here?
The Israelites and God,
Okay.
and then the Canaanites, and
well, there's Judah.
There's
the
two.
Tribes.
Judah and
So
Simeon.
Judah and Simeon, Yehuda and Shimon, tribes spoken about as if they're individuals.
But they're out.
The translation sort of opens up the surprise box and explains everything. Because if you look in the original, right next to it, if you have the Hebrew, it says in verse 3, Vayomer Yehuda l'Shimon achiv. Literally, Judah said to his brother Shimon. It doesn't say the tribe of Judah, it doesn't say the tribe of Shimon. The entire Shevet is anthropomorphized as if it's a single individual acting as a person.
But that's usually the elders, isn't it?
Okay. So it would make sense that it's the elders, but it doesn't say the elders. It just says the tribe. So this is actually a significant introduction to the character, not character in terms of person, but the character of the book of Shoftim. It's about tribes, it's about individual heroes, as opposed to other parts of Tanakh that talk about the nation of Israel as a whole, or talk about the nation with a leader. In Shoftim, we see individual tribes acting alone, or acting in groups. There's less of a sense of Am Yisrael as one nation with a common goal, acting together. And as we go through the stories, we see how different leaders represent not the entire nation, but this tribe, or that tribe, or this collection of tribes. And so here it's starting out by saying, the last leader who led the entire people is gone now. Yoshua's gone. And the Israelites want to know, okay, so we're conquering the land, we still haven't finished yet, so what do we do now? They get this reply from God that the tribe of Yehuda should go. And Yehuda is like, okay, so we'll go, but hey, other tribe, let's team up. Somehow it doesn't seem obvious anymore that they would all be working in harmony. Yeah.
How are they talking to God? They have a magic 8-ball?
Okay. So it
You
doesn't.
guessing magic
It doesn't.
eight-balls?
The Urim and the Tumim?
So it could be the Urim and the Tumim. It could be a prophet. It could be some other method. We'll see people later on in Shoftim communicating with God in various ways, but it's not explicit. Okay. So we have two tribes making a deal. You help me conquer my territory, I'll help you conquer yours.
Are the two tribes significant? Where are the other tribes?
Okay. Here we go. Here we got a bunch of maps. On the first page, we have a map in English of the tribal territories. The map in English shows their...
Here, we got plenty of them.
The map in English shows their total allotted territory. The map in Hebrew next to it, with the smaller national borders and no sort of sub-borders between tribal zones, is the actual land that the Israelites controlled at the time. So on the left we have sort of the ideal of what they were allotted according to the divine lottery that split up the land. And on the right we have what it actually ended up looking like. And we also have a number of names of some of the Shoftim who will meet in their area. On the second page, we have another map in Hebrew, which is a little bit harder to read because everything's the same size, just in different colors. And in brown, it has the names of the tribes and more or less where they're located. In black, it has mostly names of cities. And in red, it has names of Shoftim who we will encounter.
Shoftim are leaders?
Judges. Shoftim are the judges.
Them leaders?
Yeah. It's a specific word, which literally means judges, and we'll see how much judging they actually do. Okay, so if you look on the English tribal territory map on the first page, you can see in the southern part of the country, Yehuda and Shimon are together. They're right next to each other. If you look next to it, in the Hebrew map, it's slightly different, where they actually show you that Shimon is a smaller area, sort of overlapping, or I forgot the geographical terminology.
Condominiumizing?
Not condominium. Well, actually, yeah, that's a good word. Actually, condominium, but I was thinking of enclave.
Oh,
Yeah, which could be so they were more of a condominium or an enclave within Judah's territory. And so they're right next to each other, they're overlapping, they're included among each other, and so they're working together in order to conquer their land.
On the Hebrew map,
Yeah.
is the size of the name indicative of how much land they had? Because like Yehuda's in these huge letters and Shimon's in these little teeny letters.
Yeah, I think the size of the name is meant to stretch out across because they don't have borders drawn here. So like for instance, Menashe is really spread out, so the letters are big.
So
And,
what's the difference between black Shimon and red
truncated.
Shimon?
Oh, so red is Shimshon.
Oh, Shimshon, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it's a little hard to read.
Yeah, right.
Sorry, it's small letters. Okay, so we have two tribes now acting on their own, but working together, not as a coordinated effort of the Israelite nation as a whole. And what do? Who wants to continue? We're now in Pasuk 4. Go ahead. 4.
When Judah advanced, the Lord delivered the Canaanites and the Perizzites into their hands, and they defeated 10,000 of them at Bezek. At Bezek, they encountered Adoni-Bezek, engaged him in battle, and defeated the Canaanites and the Perizzites. Adoni-Bezek fled, but they pursued him and captured him, and they cut off his thumbs and his big toes. And Adoni-Bezek said, 70 kings with thumbs and big toes cut off used to pick up my scraps under my table. As I have done, so God has requited me. They brought him to Jerusalem, and he died there.
Okay, continue the next paragraph, please.
The Judites attacked Jerusalem and captured it. They put it to the sword and set the city afire, after the Judites went down to attack the Canaanites who inhabited the hill country, the Negev and Shephelah.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, so we have sort of the initial stages of the tribe of Yehudah conquering their territory from the various Canaanite nations that are living in it now. And we have two specific incidents described here. The first one is Bezek, not to be confused with the modern Israeli phone company, although some people may want to conquer it and destroy it sometimes.
Where was Bezek?
So they conquer Bezek, and there's a whole...
Is Bezek on the map?
Bezek, I don't think is on the map here. It's someplace within Yehudah's territory,
Oh. Good.
but it is not marked on this map. So we have Bezek, a place, and we have a person named Adoni Bezek. Does anyone know what Adoni,
Lord.
sir, or Lord, Mr.? So Adoni Bezek literally means...
Mr. Bezek.
Right, Mr. Bezek, or Lord of Bezek. Which means it probably isn't his actual name, but it could be the title of the local king. You are the king of Bezek, therefore you are called Adoni Bezek. And what happens to him? Something pretty gruesome.
Yeah.
Cut
Where
off
the
his
70,
toes.
he has his toes and his thumbs.
Right.
But then he talks about 70, and at first I thought, oh, that's a lot of kings for a small group. But
Right.
he's just talking, and it's sort of a metaphor, and I don't quite get it.
Ah, okay, so 70 could be a metaphor in terms of a round number. But he seems to be saying that he did this to other people.
So it's karma.
Oh,
This is
okay.
karma.
That he wasn't just the
Yeah.
king of some little local city-state,
Okay.
but that he had control over maybe a wider territory. And this is a thing that he did to people who he conquered.
Oh, okay.
And now it's being done to him.
God has
Oh.
requited me. Right.
God.
Right, so why? Like, what's this gruesome story doing here?
What?
What's this gruesome story doing here? Like, why tell us these details?
Well, okay, who cut off his toes and his thumbs?
Adoni Bezek, the Israelites.
The,
The people from Yehudah who conquered Bezek.
What comes around goes around.
Okay. What comes around goes around. So the point of the story would seem to be the philosophical point of teaching the idea that what you do, you get back. And he's explicitly attributing it to God. He says, God paid me back for what I did to other people.
So, do you take the metaphor one step further? Is that going to
Well-
happen to Judah?
Um,
I mean, he's doing the same thing.
But he didn't do it.
he sent his people to do it?
He did it at God's command.
To one person. Okay.
This guy did
Well,
it to everybody.
This was the punishment that God made.
right. So I don't think it's meant to sort of start a cycle of violence, as it were. I think he's just saying, I did this, and now it happened to me. Therefore, God must be punishing me for what I
So
did.
obviously this guy believes in the one God.
Seemingly so. So if you look in the Hebrew,
Right? Okay.
the word it uses for God is Elohim,
Okay.
which is one of our names for God, but it's also the generic term
You got it.
for a God, right?
Okay.
For a God. He does use the singular verb shilem, though, so he's not saying the gods did this to me, which you might assume as a polytheistic Canaanite he may be likely to say. He says shilem li Elohim, that God in singular with a capital G did this to me. So it doesn't necessarily mean that he now believes in the God of Israel, because he doesn't use the personal name Hashem. But he is recognizing, a divine power at work in the Israelite conquest.
At the very least, at that time, they believed that whoever won, their god was in control.
Yeah.
The god of the, yeah. Even if he believed in other gods, he thought that the Israelite God won.
Right.
Must be the more powerful.
Thank you. Yeah.
And we don't have to necessarily disregard the idea that maybe he actually is a monotheist. That's possible.
Right, it's possible.
You know,
we don't know specifically what Adoni Bezek. This is all we know about Adoni Bezek.
What 400 years previous or 300 years previous, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were wandering around as monotheists in this area, and they must have had influence on somebody.
Could be.
They only went down with 80 people.
Right. Could be. Okay, so we have this little story about Bezek, and then we have a familiar place, Jerusalem. So, the tribe of Yehuda conquers Yerushalayim,
Set it afire.
set it
And
afire.
we're assuming that the Shimonites are there too.
Right, we're assuming that they're together with them,
It's interesting they call it Jerusalem.
as opposed to,
Salem, maybe?
okay, so it's supposed to Shalem,
Yeah.
which is the name used in Bereshis when Abraham meets Malki-Tzedek, the king of Shalem.
Right.
It's also known as Yevus. I don't know if there's a reason specifically why the name Yerushalayim is used here. It could be because it's the first mention of it, and we're familiar with it already.
It's not Jerusalem when David conquers it, he names it there.
Ah, okay. So,
So this is for us?
yeah,
Or it was written after and they were using a modern name for the place.
right. That's also possible. That the final editing of the book of Shoftim could have happened after David conquered it.
Hundreds of years.
Not that long. I mean, it's a big question how long this historical period took place.
Conquered it from the Canaanites.
Yeah, from the remaining
Had a
Canaanites.
stronghold in Jerusalem.
Yeah, which is weird because Yehuda just conquered it.
Right.
So how did they? What's going on there? So we're actually going to see what's going on there very soon. Okay, so who wants to read the next part?
Where are we?
We are in Pasuk 10.
I've got different English, but I'll read.
Okay, that's fine.
Yehuda had gone forth against the Canaanites who dwelled in Hebron. The name of Hebron in early times had been Kiryat Arba, and they struck down Sheshai, Ahiman, and Talmai. From there he went to fight against the inhabitants of Debir, and the name of Debir in early times had been Kiryat Sefer. Caleb said, "Whoever smites Kiryat Sefer and conquers it, I shall give him my daughter Achsa as a wife." Othniel, son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, conquered it, so he gave him his daughter Achsa as a wife.
Okay.
That's his niece, right?
Yes.
Gave,
Yes. Or, because in Hebrew, brother is sometimes used, just like we use it in English, for someone who isn't actually the child of your parents. You can call someone your brother if they're your close friend or your more distant relative without actually being.
So who's Caleb though?
Okay, so who's Caleb? Who's Kalev ben Yefuneh?
He's the other one. He's Joshua's teammate.
Right, Joshua's teammate. When were they teammates?
When they were the spies.
The spies, exactly. They were the two good spies, while the other spies were like, oh, that land is so scary and crazy, and the people are giants, they're going to step on us, it's horrible. But,
110.
what?
So he's around 110 now.
Could be, yeah, he's pretty
But he
old.
only looks 105.
Okay.
Yeah, he's probably pretty old now.
He only looks 105.
I don't think we know how old Kalev was the first time he's mentioned. He
Don't we
doesn't
have
have
to
to be
su-
as old as Yoshua, but
Yeah, it should be
it's possible.
contemporaries, right?
He's only 100.
Could be.
I always think those ages.
right, so they were the two good spies.
It's hard to believe people live.
And so he's sort of the de facto leader of the tribe of Yehuda. He represented the tribe of Yehuda in that incident. He's therefore the first leader that we're encountering. And what's he doing?
Auctioning off his daughter.
Okay.
Why is she such a prize?
Huh.
If he only lived 105 at his age, imagine how good she lived.
Yeah, marrying into royalty.
Yeah, she represents an inn with Caleb.
And that's worth something, obviously. Okay. Sure.
Okay, and who takes him up on the offer?
She's got her own personality.
Ah,
She's
how
got
do we
her
know?
own-
How do we know she has her own
makes some
personality?
demands, too. She just doesn't go along with.
Okay, so what's her demand in the next few psukim? What does she say?
She says, give her the upper and the springs of water, the upper and lower. Is it gulot?
Gulot, right? Upper and lower gulot, which seems to be some kind of springs, located probably someplace near this city
Near
of
Beersheba.
Devere. So she's not just, we actually see her. She's acting, she's talking, she's doing stuff. So she's not just a trophy wife or a passive prize. She actually knows what's going on. She makes demands.
High maintenance.
Right? She's smart. She knows what's valuable. And she says, listen, Dad, you haven't given us anything. We need more water. This is desert land. Give us some springs.
That's why I was trying to get rid of her.
Whoever deserves her gets her.
Okay. And he listens to
A
her.
dowry.
He gives it to her. Okay. So, okay. Let's skip down to Pasuk 19. We're just seeing more short incidents and descriptions of the tribe of Yehuda slowly acquiring their
And here
territory.
it says he went with Shimon. He didn't say that before
Ah, okay.
in 16 or 18 or whatever.
Yep.
19?
Yeah, 19, please.
The Lord was with Judah so that they took possession of the hill country. But they were not able to dispossess the inhabitants of the plain, for they had iron chariots. He gave Hebron to Caleb, as Moses had promised, and he drove the 3 Anakites out of there. The Benjaminites did not dispossess the Jebusite inhabitants of Jerusalem. So the Jebusites had dwelt with the Benjaminites in Jerusalem to this day.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so the last thing we're told here about we're told here about Yehuda and their attempts to conquer their territory is they were partially successful. They were successful
Took the hill country.
in the hill country, but not in the plains because
They had iron chariots.
iron chariots. The Canaanites had better technology than we did. And so if you look at these two maps, you can see how on the right, the territory that was actually conquered is mostly hill country. It's mostly the central mountain ridge of Israel. Whereas most of the coast was not conquered. Much of the valleys up north were not conquered. And so they were able to conquer the hills, but not the valleys.
Just counterintuitive.
How come?
Because it would be, to me, it would be harder to conquer a hill than it would.
Except in the valleys,
Just
you
because
can
it's-
armor and cavalry.
Right, well, they have the iron chariots, right?
But the iron chariots couldn't operate in the hills.
Okay.
As well as
They couldn't go up those hills, yeah.
Well, what I wonder is, didn't God tell them they were going to just carry
They
the
had
Canaanites?
pasturage. They wanted pasture.
Carry?
Yeah, you know they're going to win.
Hillsides.
Okay.
So if they lost, it's got to be because of some inner failing.
Okay. We're going to get to that soon.
Who gave Hebron to Caleb?
Moshe.
They gave Hebron to Caleb, or Moses had promised.
Where is it? Where do you see that specifically? There.
It's in-
20. Okay. Vayitnu l'chalev v'chamor. Okay, yeah, they gave. So the they here is
Yeah.
probably the leaders of the tribe. It could be describing the tribe. It could be the leaders of the tribe.
Of the Judahites?
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay.
Well, before that, they said Judah and Shimon went and defeated the Canaanites.
Right.
So they is.
Okay. So what did Kalev do in Hebron when he conquered it? Or how did he conquer it?
He got rid of the 3 sons of the giant.
Sons of the Giant. Okay, your translation explains the name here, because this translation just translates the word Anak
This is the stone they
as a name and says the Anakites.
And they're giants?
Okay, the giants. Yeah.
from.
So those were the 3 names before.
The Dodgers had already moved to Los Angeles.
But I'm,
Oh, grr. My father never forgave them. We're from Brooklyn. Like, if my accent didn't give it away. Okay, so if we look back in Pasuk 10, it says that Yehudah fought the Canaanites who lived in Hebron, and they defeated Sheshaiah, Heman, and Talmai. Those are the 3 Anakim, the 3 giants. And so here we have sort of the same story repeated with a few more details about, oh yeah, Kalev was there. Okay, but on the other hand, what happened with Binyamin? Judah is going around, they're conquering this place, they're conquering that place.
Are they living peacefully with the Jebusites?
Oh, okay, so they didn't conquer them. They seem to be living peacefully with them. Seems to be.
To this day, so it must have been.
Okay, right, to this day. So the question is,
In
to what does
Jerusalem?
to this day? In Jerusalem.
Which was burnt earlier.
Right. So, if you look on the map,
Who conquered what when?
so if you look on the map, if you look on any of the maps, except not the second page one, any of the first page maps, on the left it shows you that Jerusalem is basically on the border between Yehudah and Binyamin.
Yeah.
On the map on the right, it's like a little enclave of Canaanites, and it says Yevus, because it wasn't completely conquered. That's why they're showing it that way. Maybe I could have brought you sort of a zoomed in map. If you've ever been to Jerusalem, if you're coming from southern Yerushalayim, from like Emek Rephaim, and you're going up to the old city, and right when you get to like down slope from the old city, and there's the Sultan's Pool, like ahead of you or to the left, and on the right there's a deeper valley, and that's Geben Hinnom, that Gehenna is named after. And you see the old city like above you, you're on the border. That's the border between the tribal territories of Yehudah and Binyamin. It goes up that slope and right by the city. And so what it sounds like happened is that there were multiple waves of Israelites moving into the area. The people of Yehudah fought the Yevusim, killed them, burnt part of the city, conquered part of it. When the Binyamin people got there, instead of fighting them and conquering them, they just sort of started moving in. A lot of complex international relationships going on here.
Could that have been?
There's war, there's peace, there's...
Could that have been that they saw what happened in the southern part of the city and they said, we don't want that. Come on, we'll live together.
Could be. Could be. Could be. Also, there's another example of how the tribes are not working together. Yudah and Shimon, they got together, they made a deal, they're like, but they had to make a deal. It wasn't obvious. And now Yehudah is going off, yeah, we're going to conquer these places and destroy them and live there. And Benjamin is like, let's just move in, settle down, be friendly.
6-2 to tango.
So,
Right.
and it doesn't say who the top authority is either.
Right, because there is no top authority.
Right.
There's no one person directing the activities of the nation. And so each tribe is starting to move off on its own.
So where's God at and all this?
Where is God at in all this? Well, first of all, God seems to be teaching Adoni Bezek a lesson. That seems to be where God is, first of all. And we'll get to where God is soon. The rest of this first chapter.
And then, does it mean, didn't David come from Benjamin?
David came from Judah.
From Yehuda?
Yeah, the first king, King Shaul, came from Benjamin.
I see, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Did anybody address the Anakim at all? Or we just accept it and,
There were only 3 of them?
What do you mean by address?
the
Look
fact
up and
that there
see
were
us
these
here.
giants in the world?
There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of discussion about them, who they were, what they were.
Is that Og and Shihon? And
Yeah, so Og and Sihon, over on the east side of the Yarden, whom Moshe fought, are also identified with these giant type people. It's a whole big thing about the
angels came
these
down and
giants.
sinned
Yeah.
with the women here, and that's what
That's
it
what I
was.
was.
Right, so there's some connection. So there's 3 things going on. There's the Anakim, which seems to mean giants. There's the Riphaim, who are also described as giants and associated with the Anakim, whose name also means the dead people in the underworld, and seem to have been the aboriginal inhabitants of the area before we got there and before the Canaanites even got there. And then there's the Nephilim, who are these mysterious, mythic, giant hero somethings that are associated with this weird story we read in Bereshis at the end of the Parsha this past Shabbos, where it sounds like angels mating with humans or something's going on there, and some of the like old Second Temple era legends that we didn't accept into our canon say things about fallen angels and angels mating with human beings and stuff like that. And the more sort of mainline typical rabbinic Judaism take on that story is to push aside the idea that angels would ever do something like that and to interpret it in other ways. But there's these 3 sort of descriptions of people or terms for people, the Anakim, the Rephaim, and the Nephilim, and they're associated with each other. And so these 3 giants over in Hebron are giants, whatever that means. Whether that means that they were supernaturally large, or whether it means that they were just taller and scarier and much more impressive than the common people in the area, it's unclear.
So given...
But there is a lot of discussion, like in other sources, all about what's going on here.
So given the outcome, after, in the book of Samuel, are the seeds planted now for the outcome of Samuel, where the Benjaminites, didn't fight, therefore they don't have a legitimate claim to Jerusalem?
I don't remember that ever actually coming up explicitly.
Well, just that David came from Judah, and the leaders, so-called, that came from Benjamin didn't prevail.
Okay. I don't remember that ever being brought up explicitly, but I can see that actually being a part of the political discourse at the time. Like I can imagine like a supporter of David HaMelech saying to a supporter of King Shaul's son, Ishbosheth, who tried to be king, saying like, oh, you people, you couldn't even conquer Jerusalem. Your tribe doesn't deserve to lead. I can imagine that happening, but I can't think of any sort of specific instances of it. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but when there was the rebellion, it
Right.
was the Benjaminites that were,
Which rebellion?
I don't know, it's Ishbosheth or it was, what's his, David's son?
You mean Absalom?
Oh,
or
okay.
something?
Were the
Ah,
Benjaminites
yes. And sometimes in the rebellions that occurred during David's reign, you do see Benjaminites involved, possibly because they resented the fact that they had the first king, and now why is the new king starting a whole new dynasty coming from a different tribe? Yeah. And so, I mean, yeah, it does make sense to sort of see some of the roots of the Binyamin Yehuda rivalry going on here, where they're both trying to, in some sense, conquer the same city and doing it in different ways, and succeeding or failing to different degrees. Cool, thank you. Didn't even think of that. Okay. So, if we just sort of skim through the rest of this parak, we see other tribes taking similar actions, described individually as they conquer their territory or fail to conquer their territory. So we have Beit Yosef, the house of Joseph, meaning which tribes?
Ephraim and Manasseh.
Ephraim and Manasseh. So they're conquering Bethel, which is specifically in Ephraim's territory. We see Manasseh failing to conquer various cities in its territory. And so if we look in, let's look at Manasseh. Pasuk 27. Who wants to read?
Manasseh did not dispossess Bet-Sha'an and its dependencies, or Tanakh and its dependencies, or the inhabitants of Dor and its dependencies, or the inhabitants of Iblaam and its dependencies, or the inhabitants of Megiddo and its dependencies. The Canaanites persisted in dwelling in this region, and when Israel gained the upper hand, they subjected the Canaanites to forced labor, but they did not dispossess them, nor did Ephraim dispossess the Canaanites who inhabited Gezer. So the Canaanites dwelt in their midst at Gezer.
Okay, thank you. So we have all these areas, these, how do you describe these colors? The peach-colored areas, I guess, here, as opposed to the more orangey, beige-ish areas, which are still peach. I think it's a peach color, right?
I don't know, sand, I would call it.
Sand?
Yeah.
Okay,
The
sand.
lighter one or the darker one?
The lighter
Lighter
one.
Okay, there you go.
Which one?
So what do you call the darker one?
Oh, okay.
Earth.
Earth? Sand and earth?
I don't know,
No, it
when
looks
you build
too
models of
orangey for
Israeli
me to be
aircraft,
earth.
those are the colors that you pick out of the
I can't
rack.
see the
Okay.
city's names.
Okay, but if you just look at the map
Okay, the lighter.
over here with the sand colored, all that sand color is the land that was not conquered.
Okay.
Right.
Land that was not conquered. And so what did they do with that territory? They didn't just not conquer it because they weren't strong enough to conquer it. Sometimes they were strong enough to conquer it. But what did they do? They didn't kick the people out. They didn't kill them.
Coexisted.
To dwell among them. And
Right, so they allowed them to dwell. They coexisted, but was it like peace?
No,
Were they
forced
happy,
labor.
friendly?
They subjected them to
Okay,
forced labor.
forced labor, mas, labor tax. This is another thing that nations do when they conquer each other.
right.
But I have a problem with a lot of it.
Okay,
What were the original marching orders before they crossed the road?
what were they? What were they? Do you remember? Was that a rhetorical question or a non-rhetorical
Well-
question?
They were supposed to put everybody to the sword.
Right. Right.
They were supposed to conquer, period, and God would be with them. but they didn't.
Right.
Because they were afraid again.
No, they
Well,
broke
it doesn't
into
say-
tribes.
Were they afraid here?
I don't know.
They broke into
What
tribes.
other failing could we theorize they had when they put the Canaanites to labor tax instead of killing them or kicking them out?
Compassion.
Greed, maybe greed.
Compassion.
I mean, so compassion is possible, but compassion would probably imply more friendly, let's all be happy and living together, yay, as opposed to, okay, you people now have to pay us some giant quantity of grain every year.
All right. What Dave's pointing out
Right.
is they crossed the Jordan River into the land of Israel as a unit.
Right.
Okay? Moshe has divvied up this land, and boom, they scattered into the four winds to each of their lands, except for the moment that Simeon and Judah team up together. Otherwise, it's pretty much every tribe for itself, and individually they're trying to conquer these areas. If they would sweep through, like they swept initially with Joshua as their leader, a single leader, they were much more successful when they broke up into their 150,000 of these guys and 250,000 of those guys. All of a sudden, they were off to farming and cattle raising and doing and enslaving the people to grind their grain or whatever. So it became.
But it also states in here that every land that they did conquer, God was with them. When they did conquer the city, God was with them.
Yeah, well, what it mentions is,
It
that
doesn't
who was the
mention
first guy that got killed?
that's the
Yeah,
way he lived.
because the
Adoni
guy
Bezek?
says, okay, well, God did, Adoni Bezek said, okay, this was God, that I lost, it's because of God. Is that what you're talking about?
When they conquered, God was with them, and it states that. When they conquered the Canaanites, God was with them. When they conquered the hill country, God was with them.
Those weren't
But they were
pagan.
afraid of the valleys because of the iron chariot.
Who were they conquering? Pagans or
Yeah.
believers of God?
Pagans,
Mixed.
polytheists.
And mixed people. It's all sorts of mixed people. This is the crossroads of the Middle East. There's people from everywhere here.
Right, but there weren't any other monotheists in the area at the time, as far as we know.
I'm not sure.
Okay, I mean, as far as we know from written records and from archaeological records, the only other experiment with anything like monotheism was when they kicked out all the other gods in Egypt except for the sun god, and they had just Aten, and that only lasted for like a generation or two until they switched back.
Because they were
But
In the next book, it does say that you didn't follow my directions.
Whoa.
okay, so let's get to that. Let's get to that. Parak Bet. After all these sort of individual short vignettes of individual tribes trying to conquer this territory, not conquering it enough, Parak Bet starts with. Who wants to read?
Right,
What
so,
number?
Yeah.
I'll start.
Chapter 2.
An angel of the Lord came up from Gilgal to Bochim and said, I brought you up from Egypt, and I took you into the land which I had promised on oath to your fathers. And I said, I will never break my covenant with you. And you, for your part, must make no covenant with the inhabitants of this land. You must tear down their altars, but you have not obeyed me. Look at what you have done. Therefore, I have resolved not to drive them out before you. They shall become your oppressors, and their God shall be a snare to you. As the angel of the Lord spoke these words to all the Israelites, the people broke into weeping. So they named that place Bochim, and they offered sacrifices there to the Lord.
Okay, thank you. So now we have a message from God. Brought by
Angels.
an angel, a malach. And malach literally means
Messenger.
messenger. So it could be an angel in the sense of like a supernatural being, or it could be a prophet. It isn't clear, but it's coming from Gilgal. Gilgal
On the coast.
is it's right near the sort of a coast. Oh, you have a map there? Oh, cool. Okay, so Gilgal is near the coast of what?
It's near the police team. Near the Mediterranean.
Really?
Where I've got it.
Really? The Great Sea.
Really, Gilgal?
That's
Over there?
this map has it.
Let me see your map.
What does it say before Gilgal?
Galilee and Gilgal.
Oh, that's interesting. That's a different Gilgal.
Okay.
Okay.
Here's Gezer.
Right. Oh, you were there?
Yeah.
Okay.
and
So let's see.
Where'd I read?
if
I guess that's a
No,
carrot land.
Not great map. I got a book of maps that's really good. Here's Gezer.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a
So-
Detroit Gyrene at Gezer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so Gilgal, if you look at the really small letters on the sand and peach map, if you look right in the middle,
See that?
if you see the Jordan River,
Yeah.
so if you follow the Jordan River just a little bit north from the Dead Sea,
Yeah.
and the big red letters that say Ehud Ben Gera, who someone will meet soon,
Right above it.
right above that it says Ha-Gilgal. This was the first place that Bnei Israel camped after crossing the river.
They named it after a wheel.
Yeah. Or a ring. Because Gilgal can also be, it can be a wheel. Galgal is a wheel, but Gilgal seems to mean some kind of ring. Like if you imagine like a Stonehenge thing, or not necessarily something as dramatic as Stonehenge.
Could be a group of trees.
Yeah, it could be a group of trees. It's usually, I think, a group of stones. There's actually a really fascinating archaeological site in Israel in the Golan called Gilgal Rephaim. Speaking of the Rephaim, I'm a little obsessed with them. But I actually visited that place. They call it the Stonehenge of Israel. It doesn't look like Stonehenge. It doesn't have like doorways, but it's concentric circles of these stone walls with this ancient tomb in the middle. It's very fascinating. But in order to get there, you have to hike through these like lots and lots of land with cows and cow poo and thorns and plants that are trying to kill you. Don't try doing it at night. Go there with a lot of time before sunset. I tried going there twice, and the first time we had to turn back because we got lost, and then the sun was setting, and we didn't want to be lost in a field of plants trying to kill us with cows at night. But the second time, like a few years later, I actually got there, and it was very cool. But so that's what a Gilgal seems to be, some kind of ring. And so this messenger, this angel, is coming up from Gilgal, sort of retracing the steps of the Israelites entering the land, as if, yeah, you came into the land and you messed up. Let me show you how to do it again. Coming up from Gilgal to someplace farther into the hills, into the center of the country, because it's coming up. And the message is, just as you pointed out earlier,
Dave.
the people haven't been following the rules. The rules are, you conquer the land, kick them out, kill them, destroy their altars, they do human sacrifice, they have all these horrible polytheistic gods and things, just like, get rid of everything, make a clean slate, start your new society here. But they haven't been doing it. What?
I'm just thinking, why? Why do they have to kill them?
Because they're evil.
Final solution.
God doesn't like evil.
Read the next paragraph.
Because it influence.
They're evil. Like, God doesn't like evil. That's it. It's as simple as that.
Right. I mean,
Clean slate.
the Canaanites were known for doing things like human sacrifice. It was not the kind of religious faith that you could be like, oh yeah, they're nice. They also teach about being friendly and helpful to each other, and like, yeah, it's more like if you think it's not quite as dramatic as the Aztecs, but I mean, it's clear in Tanakh that God really doesn't like idols and really doesn't like people worshiping things other than God. And then when you throw in that you're like killing people and using that as your religious sacrifice, that's...
But
yeah.
was it the Benjamites lived side by side with the Jebusites to this day. Now, they weren't killing, presumably,
Exactly.
if they were living to this day.
Exactly. They were living
but they
together.
were supposed to have killed them.
Right.
So
Or at least removed them from the land.
it's not like they were so evil that they had to get rid of them. I mean,
Yeah, but
because they were, otherwise they were going to do all sorts of things because they managed to live side by side.
yeah, but after they that was pointed out in the next chapter, in Perek Beit, God says, "Well, you guys loused up."
Right.
That isn't
right,
what I want.
know that, but you can't say it was because they were so terrible that they were supposed to be killed. They were just supposed to be killed. Period. It didn't matter if they were good, bad, or indifferent. They were supposed to be moved.
Mm-hmm.
There's room for that in God's orders. Yeah.
So it's not because they were some kind of monsters, because somehow they managed to live side by side for quite a while.
Are you allowed to question
Sometimes
God?
we're our own
Question
best
God.
monsters.
Yeah.
So, but being side by side with the other people was not in our best interest if we're going to serve God.
Well, one of the reasons God gives the orders is He says, "Well, you're going to be seduced by their gods, and you're going to live their way, and you're going to take their women."
And they're cult prostitutes.
Right. I mean, they I don't think we can say that the fact that they were able to live side by side means that they weren't necessarily so horrible. Because, I mean, there have been societies that did all kinds of horrible things, and people lived there, and they had productive lives, and they didn't kill everyone. They just killed those people, and they tortured these people, and those, and I mean, the Aztec Empire was very successful, and they had culture and art and literature and philosophy and all these things, and the heart of their religious ideology was that they had to feed human beings to their gods, or else the universe would collapse. So the Canaanites didn't have quite that dramatic of a theory of human sacrifice, and they didn't do it to quite that extent. But I don't think we can say that just because they succeeded in living together, that it necessarily means that the Canaanites weren't necessarily doing horrible things. And part of the problem is that Bnei Israel would then be enticed to join in.
Who was sacrificing the kids in the Valley of Hinnom?
Okay, so
Wasn't the Jebusites?
so it could have been them. I mean, it ended up being us when we were really bad. Which is exactly the problem. That's exactly the problem. And
Somebody foresaw and was trying to eliminate,
right.
but we didn't go along with them.
Right. And so now this malach is here and is reminding the people, listen, we made a deal. You made a deal with God. They're supposed to come in to the land, not make deals with the Canaanites, destroy their altars, and instead you're just having fun, hanging out, being friendly with them and their gods. And so what's going to happen instead? If you look in Pasuk 3.
So the Jews are just going to be oppressed by these people that they didn't kill.
Right. Right. So you were supposed to get rid of the Canaanites. Since you didn't, they're going to oppress you. They'll be a constant source of trouble for you. You won't be able to succeed in building your new Israelite society.
And here, God owns up to the presence of other gods.
Oh, because it says that their gods shall be a snare to you?
Yeah.
I don't know, I don't think that.
That doesn't mean that
Yeah.
I see it that way. Monotheism doesn't exclude other beings besides God and man.
I think the definition of monotheism is that there's only one God. Monolatry, though, is the belief that there might be other things out there, or there are other things out there, but I only worship this one particular thing.
But this is
so-
God's cosmology. It's not.
That indicates monolatry.
Right. So there actually are a lot of
Their
the sort of the
ideology
modern
was-
academics believe that there was a lot of monolatry going on in Israelite culture. I think it's clear from Tanakh that it was happening a lot. I guess basically the disagreement between sort of the traditional perspective and some of the modern academics is what the official religion was. But it's clear that Bnei Israel were dabbling in other gods and not necessarily rejecting them, like what exactly is being warned about here. You're going to start worshiping these other gods, you're going to start respecting them instead of just believing in only Hashem. Okay. So, let's continue. Okay, who wants to read? Pasuk 6. Yeah.
When Joshua dismissed the people, the Israelites went to their allotted territories and took possession of the land. The people served the Lord during the lifetime of Joshua and the lifetime of the older people who lived on after Joshua, who had witnessed all the marvelous deeds that the Lord had wrought for Israel. Joshua, son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110 years and was buried on his own property at Timnath Heres in the hill country of Ephraim, north of Mount Gash. And all the generations were likewise gathered to their fathers.
Okay, thank you. So, just a short retrospective. As we're about to move on, it just looks back at Yoshua. Okay, so Yoshua was the leader of the whole people. He passes away. And now what do? We had already seen, it just describes in short as the Israelites went to their allotted territories. Yelchu b'nei Yisrael ish l'nachalato, each to their own territory, each to their own homestead. The tribes are separating. And we now have an old generation and a new generation. The old generation, what do we know about them?
They they wandered in the desert.
Okay, and what did they experience when they were wandering in the desert?
Miracles.
They saw miracles. They saw miracles. They saw the hand of God. All kinds of stuff. They believed.
They were born in the desert, weren't they?
Yes. Yeah. But now we have another generation.
The new generation born in the land.
Right. And so they didn't experience all the miracles in the desert. They didn't experience God protecting them and leading them and shepherding them through the wilderness.
Clouds of glory and
Right.
all that good stuff.
Right. They didn't experience any of that. So what do you think is gonna happen? What happens when the impact of a spiritual experience starts fading away?
The value of it diminishes.
Right, the value of it diminishes. Don't remember it. And these people only heard about it from their parents. And we know how kids sometimes feel about stories that their parents tell them. So, okay, who wants to read? Another generation.
Another generation arose after them which had not experienced the Lord or the deeds that he had wrought for Israel. Then the Israelites did what was offensive to the Lord. They worshipped the Baalim and forsook the Lord, the God of their fathers, who had brought them out of the land of Egypt. They followed other gods from among the gods of the people around them and bowed down to them. They provoked the Lord. They forsook the Lord and worshipped Baal and the
Ashtarot. Okay,
Ashtaroth.
thank you. Okay, so what did they do?
So they really went the other way.
They really went the other way.
Yeah.
They gave up on God. They started worshiping Canaanite deities. The Baals, the Ashtarots.
They're probably intermarried.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense also. They probably did that.
When they intermarried, the new spouse brings in her gods.
Right. That's actually what the Torah says specifically about don't marry the people in Canaan, because when you do, then your in-laws will start inviting you to their religious ceremonies. And then you'll start worshiping their gods, and then everything falls apart. So they start abandoning Hashem. They start worshiping Baal and Ashtoreth in the various forms that they took.
I wonder why they were so worried about, like, why didn't they think if they went into these territories, the other people would love what the Jews are doing and act like Jews?
Because it's harder to be a Jew than anything else.
But they're not Jews yet, are
Hey, you know what
they?
kosher meat costs? That's probably it.
Sure, they got the commandments and they're in the
That's no
land.
good
They're
porterhouse.
Israelites.
Yeah, right.
Right, but they got the law, they got all the commandments, they have everything they need to do. Right? I mean, they need to be circumcised, they need to do 613, it's a lot of work.
Oh,
Right. Wait, sorry, were you just critiquing the use of the term Jew as opposed to Israelite for this historical period?
Well, I thought
Was
there
that what
was
you
a
were saying?
difference.
Yeah. So technically speaking, at this point, we are Bnei Israel. We only become known as Jews after the Babylonian exile, when when the kingdom of Yehuda, not just the tribe of Yehuda, but the kingdom of Yehuda, is basically the only Israelite polity left, recognizably. So it's a nitpick that some people have.
Either way.
It doesn't bother me that much, but I try to
We
say...
don't have all the laws yet, the rabbinic laws.
Okay. Okay, very, probably.
But we still
There's lots of different theories
We still have
about
the Ten Commandments. We still have Sabbath, we still have
the development of
no
rabbinic laws.
adultery, there's still...
Right, there's lots of commandments in the Torah already.
Still have to be circumcised. I mean,
But who's got the
there's a lot
Torah?
to do.
That's 10 as opposed to 6.
Everyone was supposed to write their own copy.
Well, supposedly everyone, but from what they're doing, it looks like a lot of them were not paying attention.
They split up,
Right.
right? Are they reading Torah on Monday and Thursday? Not till Ezra, right?
Probably not. Okay. So they're doing the wrong thing. They're worshiping idols. They're dabbling in Canaanite polytheism. And God is unhappy. Okay, so what does God do?
Spanks them.
In what manner?
Well, in their lifestyles, in their business, when they're struggling with other people around, they're not going to have God's support. They'll just be even with everybody else. And
Okay, so let's see. What does it say?
He handed them over to foes who punished them. He surrendered them to their enemies on all sides, and they could no longer hold their own against their enemies.
Is basically what you were saying. Okay, so the people give up on God, and God gives up on them. And instead of protecting them from dangers or potential dangers from other people in the area,
He hands them over.
exactly. Okay, let's read the next pasuk also. I mean, I can read it. In all their campaigns, the hand of the Lord was against them to their undoing, as the Lord had declared and as the Lord had sworn to them, and they were in great distress. So, whatever they're doing starts to fail. Other people attack them. They fight back. They're failing. They're losing. They're being plundered, oppressed.
So in all of this, was there any opposition from anyone, or was it just a collective consciousness and they just all did it? Was it-
I don't know. It doesn't say anything here
'cause you're
specifically,
talking about
but
a lot of people that are doing, that are getting blamed for one.
right.
one
But
thing.
in Tanakh, there's generally a principle of collective responsibility.
Okay.
So if a lot of the people in the nation are doing the wrong thing, then the nation as a whole gets punished. There's much less of a sense of sort of individual judgment, individual providence. It works more in terms of the nation as a whole and the life of the nation. And so people are suffering from enemies attacking them, plundering them. And they are in distress. Vayetzer lahem mod. They're in a lot of pain. So, then what happens? What's the next step?
God gave them, just in English it says judges.
Okay, good. So your translation is very literal. It says judges.
Ours says chief.
Yeah,
Here, this one says chieftains, because this is like the big secret of the book of Judges. We're gonna see. Almost none of them do any judging whatsoever. There's very little judging going on.
And nobody listens to them even when they...
Right. Shofet, in this context, does not mean someone who sits in court and renders judgment, who decides legal cases. It means a local leader, a chieftain, as they translate it here.
So why did it come down to us as judges?
Because
Why do they call it the Book of Chieftains?
probably because that's a literal translation of the name. I mean, the word shofet means a judge, but just as we, just like we use the word chief to mean something other than like one particular context, the word shofet is also used for different
But inherently,
meanings.
there's a judgment in there, because if the group of people that they're leading
Right.
is going off the path, then they
Right.
have to judge that they're going off the path, and they got to bring them back to the path. They got to make an assessment.
Yeah, but
Okay.
how do they bring
Good.
it back to the path?
Okay, good, but
Right,
it's
so they-
not like
But no,
it's not like a judge in court.
Well, no, not
But
like a
there's
judge
still-
in
there's
court, but
judgment,
there's a
right.
judgment in that.
Okay,
This
good
group of
point.
people is going this way, and I can see that, so it's a judgment at that point that I've got to bring them back this way as a chief.
Okay,
They're breaking the standard.
I imagine
right,
somebody going off the path,
right.
being brought to the chieftain,
Okay.
and he judges them, and it's over,
Okay.
right? So he
So
is
we
the-
can imagine that, but we don't have specific examples of that.
But it seems to me that's the way tribalism goes. It's somebody goes and he executes judgment on whoever isn't following the chosen path by the chief.
Okay.
But
Yes.
I don't know where the English names came from.
Right.
But Bamidbar doesn't translate to numbers in
Correct.
any stretch of the imagination.
Correct.
So I don't know who came up with the names, but they don't have to have anything to do with what.
Right, but here it
This
is
is closer.
true
This is
that
closer.
shofet literally means
Yeah, but
someone
I'm
who
just
judges.
saying, whoever came up with the English, I don't know what the history of that is, but it just doesn't it happens to in this case, but it
Right.
doesn't have.
Right, it doesn't have to. That's true.
So I wouldn't go by that.
But I think thank you for your image of tribal society. That makes sense. But we're gonna see like what they're described as doing.
I have a question.
Yeah.
In this sentence, when the Lord raised up the chieftains for them, the Lord would be with the chieftain and would save them from the enemies during the chieftain's time for the. So who's them? Because
Them is the people.
But it keeps saying that the people never listened to the chieftain.
Ah. So
the
sometimes they
next-
did, sometimes they
If
didn't.
the chieftain's strong enough,
Yeah, but this
They're
doesn't
gonna listen to
assume.
him.
But this doesn't assume that the people
the
listen to the
Lord would be
chieftain.
moved by to pity
Pity.
by their moanings because of those who oppress them and crush them. And when the chieftain died, so they temporarily
No,
obeyed.
No, it doesn't say they
Exactly.
obeyed. It just says they moaned and groaned.
No, they moan and
No,
groan,
he
and then
groans
Hashem
about
brings in a
it.
chieftain,
Yeah.
and the chieftain leads them until he gets offed, and then they're without again, and they go and wander
Well, still,
off their
it
merry
doesn't
way.
necessarily say that they obeyed. It just says that that things worked out well for them while that chieftain that the Lord appointed was there.
Right,
It was all about the chieftain, not the people.
Right.
right. But he's he's somebody to look up to. He's somebody to follow.
It was somebody the Lord was with. Things went well because the Lord appointed him.
So I don't know why the Lord saved them.
Okay.
Okay.
What chapter Bet here is doing is it's laying out the cycle that we're going to see throughout the book.
A Gilgal.
Yes, yeah, it's a Gilgal. So the people sin. They start getting a little too friendly with the Canaanites, worshiping Canaanite gods, etc. Punishment comes, usually in the form of some other nation coming and conquering or raiding or oppressing them. The people are in pain. Some kind of repentance, assumedly, is going on in there, sighing and moaning. And so they get a shofet, a chieftain, a leader, who is raised up by God, picked, however you want to describe it. We'll see how some of them get their leadership, who leads the people against the enemies, wins. The people are inspired. They do the right thing. They're doing good for a while. And then when the chieftain dies, their influence disappears and the people start sinning again. It goes around and around and around. Over and over again. This is what we're going to see. So this is sort of the introduction to the book, laying out how it all works, what this whole historical period is like. Okay.
Doesn't say much about us as a people that we can't.
We can't keep it together for
Just human nature. We're human.
right.
But you'd think, see the little period where it's good and chieftain? Like, you should be able to look back and maybe learn from it.
Right. Well, that's
And we didn't.
right. So I mean,
People have various qualities of leadership,
Yeah, I'm
and
just
some
saying.
don't have any.
No, I'm just saying the people in general.
Mhm.
Don't seem to be,
okay. Okay. So
Not only that, but the time keeps coming back to the time of Joshua, so you don't get the feeling that it's moving in time, because at the end of at the end of 20 going down, it sounds like they're already back again.
right.
It's saying the same thing. The Lord is incensed, and he will not drive out those people. So it's, yeah, you get that cyclical feeling.
Right. Because Yehoshua is sort of the symbol of when things were good. When the people were united, when they were dedicated to God, when they followed instructions. And then once Yehoshua passes away and everyone starts sort of drifting apart, they lose that center, they lose that concentration, and they never finish the job.
But the task was assigned when Yeshua was alive.
Exactly.
Okay. And that's when they accepted it, and that's when they made the covenant.
Right.
But as soon as they cross the river and Yeshua dies, that's when they decide not to follow the covenant.
Right.
And that's when all hell breaks loose.
Although that happened a few years after they crossed. Like they crossed the river, they spent a few years conquering, and then Yehoshua passes away, and then they give up, as it were. Yeah.
Could a chieftain be equated with a tzaddik? Because the
Tzaddik in what sense?
the tzaddik, the people that follow him, the benefit from him being alive, and then when they sin so much then the tzaddik dies, and the
Like a Hasidic
as-
tzaddik?
Yes.
I'm not an expert on Hasidic
But there's
philosophy.
nothing there saying that this chieftain is
but-
any more knowledgeable or anything. He's just a leader.
Right, so we'll see the personality traits and qualifications of a number of these Shoftim. So we can judge that on our own. I'm not a Chassid, I'm not an expert in Hasidic philosophy. I would assume that since most of the Shoftim are heroes of Tanakh, and many of them are prophets, I would assume that someone looking from a Hasidic perspective would probably see them in the image of a Hasidic tzaddik, but I can't say that for sure. But even outside of that particular image of a tzaddik, I think it's very clear from the cycle as Perek Bet presents it that there is this dependency between the people and the leader, where whether for some kind of spiritual, metaphysical kind of reason or just personal psychological reasons, when the leader is there, they can inspire the people. When the leader is there, the people know to do the right thing. And then as soon as the leader disappears, once again, just like happened with Yoshua, everything starts to fall apart again. So, yeah.
God sent the leaders then, so the leaders were good.
Right. So we're going to see as it goes. Some of them were gooder than others. And that's part of what I find personally fascinating about Sefer Shoftim, about these different leaders. Like, some of them, sort of obviously the image of like, yes, God picked this person and sent them to rescue the people. And others of them, it's like, really? This guy? Really? Okay, I guess so. But
what we're just, I know we're coming to that. What kind of things did they do to make sure that the people were doing the right thing?
That's in the next chapter.
you mean how they
How
ruled?
were they chieftains? What did they do? Why were they chieftains? What actions?
You want me to spoil it, or do you want to see it as it goes?
Give me 11 o'clock news tonight. We're going to have this story, and don't give me anything else.
Okay, well, there's a lot of, the name of the class in full.
Yes, chieftains, warlords, terrorists. Okay.
Okay, so there's a lot of fighting going on. There's a lot of military leadership in particular.
There's a lot of
I'll be back next week.
Okay.
there's a lot of turmoil.
Okay.
It's a lot of turmoil.
in all of this?
Where's the ark? The ark is probably in Shiloh.
Yeah.
Because when the people traveled with the
Pinchas.
ark, they traveled with God.
Right. But now the ark is in a place and the people aren't there. And maybe they're visiting, but they're not very close.
But even when the ark was in battle, if God didn't, wasn't in favor of who was fighting,
right?
then things
And
didn't
in
go well.
Shiloh,
And they had to fight to get the
there
ark
are
back.
some people that are still
It's all over Shmuel.
religious, and they come for their 3 times a year, and
Right.
Just because there's the ark
Right.
doesn't mean things are going to work.
Right, the problem is that we know that there was a lot of syncretism going on. And there are people who were worshiping Hashem, and they would come to the Mishkan and bring their sacrifices, and then the next week they would go and worship Baal. There were people who were mixing everything together.
They had Christmas trees in their huts.
Well, they had Asherah trees.
Right.
But okay, so
Hey, Yashar
that's
Koch.
it. That's the beginning. That's the introduction. We're going to see that cycle over and over again with different characters, different people, different incidents, different enemies, different leaders, different heroes. And we're going to explore each of them, who they were, what they did, what we can learn from them, and that's how it goes. Thank you everybody for coming.
What was the third
Hopefully
one?
see you all
Anikim,
next
Rephaim,
week.
And the
And Nephilim.
Nephilim.
Yeah, Nephilim.